Could another sizable acquisition be on the horizon within the gaming world? Well, it certainly looks like the plan is now in motion. But let's get into all that up next. What's going on, guys? It's Kalo, and I'm here to give you the lowdown on all things gaming. And if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to this channel for weekly video game news content. Drop a like on the video, and welcome to the Level Up. So, it does look like there's another big shakeup brewing within the gaming world. And this is thanks to a new report that broke in the middle of the night. Now, over the past few years, we as gamers have been a little bit spoiled in this regard, that we've pretty much seen a big studio acquisition seemingly every other year. We've seen the likes of Bungie being picked up by Sony, Xbox and the Bethesda merger, and of course, let's not forget about the ABK deal. But that's all in the past, because today's acquisition talk centers around From Software, who are the studio behind the ever so popular Elden Ring and Dark Souls games. Another weird bit of information here is Acquire would also be lumped into this buyout. And in case you didn't know, they're the studio behind Mario and Luigi Brothership, which you learn something new every day. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here, and let's jump back to the start of these rumblings and work our way up to last night. So up first, this story all stemmed from this exclusive report by Reuters. This is where they claim Sony was in talks to purchase Kadokawa, who owns a majority stake of From Software. It was also claimed that Sony was very keen on getting this deal signed, sealed, and delivered, and this is all within the coming weeks. And for more context here, Kadokawa owns 70% stake in From Software, and Sony currently owns around 14%. Now, as for Kadokawa stakes themselves, Sony has 2% of those. But it's worth noting there, other powerhouse companies like Tencent also have a piece of that company. And again, as of right now, these are just talks, and nothing is set in stone here. But we're gonna expand more on that later. Now, to kind of give you my general thoughts on everything up until that point, this deal makes too much sense for both sides. Sony has plenty of reason and plenty of money to make this deal happen. And when you do look at a company like Kadokawa, they have plenty of games and anime under their belt, which fits Sony's overall business model. Now I'm gonna kind of divulge from gaming here and talk more about anime here, mainly because Sony already owns companies like Funimation and Crunchyroll. So again, things there start to line up. But the anime side of this all, which is funny enough, that's where I think this deal can kind of get caught up. Having two big anime properties under your belt is already enough. Now you factor in Kadokawa and all the companies they own and all the animes they own, and suddenly enough, those monopoly talks start to bubble up. And I only say this as an Xbox fan who's seen the whole ABK deal go through. Those monopoly talks will hold you up for years. Now back to the games, which is the thing I personally care about here. Now let's jump to as recently as last night. This is where Kadokawa themselves confirmed there is something indeed brewing between them and Sony. And here's their official statement. Quote, "There are some articles on the acquisition of Kadokawa Corporation, hereinafter the company, by Sony Group Incorporated. However, this information is not announced by the company. The company has received an initial letter of intent to acquire the company's shares, but no decision has been made at this time. If there are any facts that should be announced in the future, we will make an announcement in a timely and appropriate manner." Now, there you have it. Nothing is set in stone, but there is smoke brewing here, and normally when there's smoke, there's gonna be fire. When you really think about it, this will be a move that could upset a lot of fans. And that all hinges how Sony handles From Software and its massive library of games moving forward. Having that big majority stake here will grant Sony enough power and control to dictate where games release. Mainly, I'm looking at Dark Souls and Elden Ring moving forward. Or should I say Game of the Year nominee Elden Ring? I'm sorry, I just had to say it. As we've seen in the past, especially with PlayStation, they are heavily driven by exclusives, but more recently they've taken a less firm stance on that. So hopefully this applies here and they treat From Software more like they currently do with Bungie. Also, one could argue at this point that From Software really blew up in popularity after Dark Souls 3. So they do have, I'm gonna use this Xbox term here, they do have legacy on other consoles now. Factor in Elden Ring, which is obviously very popular, and they've cultivated a mass audience across multiple platforms, including the PC. But at the same time, I can't help but think this is PlayStation we are talking about after all. So they could technically work around this all by releasing their games exclusively on the PlayStation console and the PC, much like they do with games like God of War and Spider-Man. But again, personally, I think this acquisition makes too much sense for PlayStation, especially when you start to factor in games like Bloodborne that so desperately need some TLC. TLC from Software in regards to Bloodborne, I think a lot of fans would be happy. And when you just talk about Dark Souls and Elden Ring by themselves, they fit quite nicely within the PlayStation ecosystem. But with all that being said, I'm gonna pass this one off to you guys. Do you think this deal goes through? Does it make sense? And what are your thoughts overall? But that about does it here. I've been K-Lo, I gave you the lowdown on all things gaming, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to this channel for weekly video game news content. Drop a like on the video, and this has been the Level Up.